So far, there is absolutely nothing I would consider insincere about the way Andor is handling its mature rating. In other projects, maybe the tough conversations have happened prematurely. There are numerous examples of directors getting too far ahead of themselves, or ideas that ultimately undermine the characters, not always by choice. But that's not where this discourse is going. Where Star Wars is being taken in Andor Season 2 is certainly not to a dialect riddled with corporate reservations. Conditioning this season is a radical timetable. About 1 year of the story has passed already, and that likely means that the pieces on the board are just about to start falling into place. But as I'm writing and listening to the discourse, one thing is eerily reminiscent of Season 1's beginning. For respect for the art, and from Tony Gilroy's own point of view, it is better to be honest with your story than to be insincere with it. It is vital to telling Star Wars seriously. Cheating lore of this magnitude is a mistake. It would keep Season 2 from repeating the success of its predecessors, specifically by allowing each individual story beat to directly affect our characters. Bix's assault, Tay's fraying patience, the untethered rebel outpost, a doomed Chandrillan wedding. In this world, everything is something because everything makes the story. The moments of struggle and sweat and futile courage have always registered differently under Andor's palette because it loves to romanticize those rugged edges of partisanship. I wish that was the focus so far. Our discourse misses these incredible moments of stage setting that we're sure to look back on as the highlights of this Star Wars. The lore that Rogue One fans crave and sequel trilogy survivors needed more of. Lore of characters who are given a narrative backbone. The world under Gilroy's creative team leaves different marks of leadership we can aspire towards, and when followed through sincerely, its non-bureaucratic relationships become the tipping points of our empathy. Season 2 ever more so. I understand the hesitancy, if you're approaching the themes in good faith, but maybe Andor isn't your cup of tea because the violence addresses the world around it. This is important Star Wars to frame, as it codifies the Empire for what they've always been: fascist and evil. It's not meant to be minced or debated or rationalized. Their ideology, by definition, is irrational. Misrepresenting the violence baked into the Empire's systems for the sake of levity or our wide-spanning sensibilities is choosing to purposefully excuse our conscience from the responsibility of ever speaking truth to power. This ability to look at what we are is Andor's superpower, and it's always focused on showing us what the axe forgets and what the trees remember. Try not to miss the forest for the latter. Season 2 is heavy. Mon is bleeding out slowly, Cassian is being dragged into the mud of his new ideology, and Luthen is on a collision course with something seemingly just over the horizon. These are the kinds of behind-the-scenes stories surrounding A New Hope that many of us have waited decades for. The lore of a baby-faced rebellion still gaining sentience by way of one traumatic event after another. The systems of the state are exposed and the symbolism is only jarring by extension, as one would anticipate for a story of this magnitude. Season 1 was about showing Cassian carve off his pound of flesh to prove himself, and at some point, I suspect there will be a time for Mon Mothma to do that as well, and there is no choice but to bring the two of them together, maybe in this coming chapter. It's what I consider to be the focal point of the season, and where Krennic's ascension into power in Rogue One has cleverly met its thematic equal. The relationship between Cassian Andor and Mon Mothma is, I believe, more important than anything else when looking at the trajectory of this story. As the fringes of the ground resistance move away from the edges, we recenter the frame around the biggest chess pieces. We now get a real chance to test the legs of this mature rating, this mature Star Wars. And if we're going to take anything away from the start of Season 2, it's that the story needed to be bigger than the characters, and it is. But it cannot exist without them, and this absolutely doesn't. Until Andor, the rebellion was hiding in cold caves begging for spare parts, and now they're out of the embryonic stages. The main story being driven by sacrifice is just what Andor was built on, and looking back, it's one of my favorite parts of this entire saga. Rather than chasing wild theories or tempting the canon with undercooked ideas, we're focusing on Star Wars' rhythm. Where Season 1 found a lot of balance was when it used Luthen as the catalyst for change. He kickstarted Cassian's own hero's journey, and he played a pivotal role to all subversions of our expectations. Since taking his new introduction with Mon Mothma, he's managed to linger over every piece of the board. Like death from Ingmar Bergman's Seventh Seal, and the two of them have had the most fascinating connection ever since. This is Mon's moment to grow into the woman we know she will be, and for Cassian to now break out of Luthen's shadow. The more Luthen touches of their lives, the faster the radicalization, an aspect of his character that I am glad is returning. Star Wars deserves real characters for its world, and not just their hollow aesthetics. When has the opposite ever made for a better canon? When I listen to some critics talk about how this is still too mature for Star Wars because it's all too straightforward, as if they ever really cared about the merits of the subject matter to begin with, I ask just one time. Can you show me how Season 2 has deviated from itself in any way, or where this aforementioned nuance is sidetracking character progression? I don't see how you can, because then we wouldn't be watching Andor. And now back into the fires of this galactic cradle magocracy we go. And as always, thanks for watching.